This episode, my friend Pete and I sat down and we talked about qualified plans, defined contribution, defined benefit plans. We spent a lot of time on cash balance plans and really some of the considerations that are required and then the exit strategies that should be considered. So thank you for listening. We had fun and hope you enjoy.
Yeah, and again, there's advantages too. You just have to understand what you're getting into.
And so there are three. Those are really kind of four advantages: tax deductibility, the quote unquote known benefit in retirement, quote unquote retirement. Then the assets are held in trust,
the protection of the trust,
right? And then they're backed by the PBGC. What are the other advantages?
So there's some other advantages depending on what vehicle you're going to put. Which a vehicle is the one where you put the money.
Yeah,
not the custodian, just actually where the money is.
Right.
What is it in the market? Is it in annuity? Is it in life insurance? So, it does advantage them to put them in life insurance. And there's two schools of thought on this. Some people do not like life insurance inside any kind of plan.
Yeah,
they're like,
life insurance is very polarizing. It's like politics.
Yeah, it's
love it or hate it.
You love it or hate it. Yeah. So some of them will go, oh, well, that's ridiculous. Why would you want to put your money into a life insurance inside the plan because you're not going to get it back? Well, I've already had 3 payouts of life insurance, and I don't think any of those families would say, yeah, I don't
need the money.
I don't need the money.
No, you keep it, Pete.
Yeah.
It's like, I bet none of them ever said, wow, this is too much.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Never heard that.
Never heard that, not once.
Have you ever heard, is this all?
I've heard,
is there any more?
Is this all? Is there any more?
Yeah, it's tragedy.
In some cases, in one particular case that we had where it was the rank and file employee that passed away, we had life insurance in the plan, and that was the only life insurance that person had. So it was a huge godsend for that family.
So they were insurable. These are not guaranteed issue products.
No.
I mean, you can put guaranteed issue products in there, very low face amounts. But so my point here is that individual was insurable.
Correct.
So
and he actually, it was a car wreck. He was on his way home from work.
Sure.
And that's what happened. Stuff happens, and fortunately it was in there. The other part of that is kind of, it's cool from the standpoint if you know it and you understand it and you have someone who can help you. Yeah. At the end of the rainbow, you can keep the life insurance and pull it out of the plan.
I want to talk about that later because my position, I mean, I have my position, I have my opinions, and I have my experience, and and they all come with me. Okay. So I'm going to share them. But going back to the benefits, to the employer, another benefit could be the legal right to discriminate against employees. So, and then therefore that allows them to overfund or highly, that high limits of contribution.
Correct.
Much higher than the 401k and the IRA. I mean, you can, with the cash balance plan, you can put a lot of money in the cash balance plan.
Yeah, it's over 200,000.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I mean,
in terms of a year, depending on what your income is, right?
Exactly. So you have high income, you can blow right past the limit.
Yeah, which what is it, 50,000 and 56 if the catch up.
Yeah, I don't know the details, but I know. Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a huge number.
A huge number to the point where, anyway, in to do these things, I agree with you. You have to work with somebody who's educated on beyond just a cash balance plan. You got to have in my opinion, a broad knowledge and a broad experience. Right. It would be most helpful to anyone who considers these. Okay. But those do go into the quote unquote advantage column. I can discriminate and I can heavily weight the contribution. Right.
Right there. Yes.
And that's why employers love them. Yes, I do not fall on the belief that the employers don't have any benevolence to their employees. I don't believe that at all. I think most, in my experience, and I mean, maybe I want to believe, but
most of them care about their employees.
They love their employees.
Yeah, most of my clients is small business. It's family.
Yeah,
they consider them family.
Yeah,
and when they lose someone goes to another company or whatever, they hurt.
Yeah, sure,
because someone they work with.
Okay, so let's talk about the disadvantages.
So sometimes it's a two-edged sword, right? So the advantages of the tax break can become a problem down the road.
Well, okay. Enlighten us.
If you're not strategic about it, now remember again.
Oh, I understand. We'll talk about strategy and strategy.
Strategic.
In a minute, yeah, right.
So again, you're putting that money in that second bucket.
Okay, so the disadvantage would be you got to have a strategy.
You better have an exit strategy.
No question. Okay, so it requires a well thought out exit strategy.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's a disadvantage because some people just put it in.
And some people don't like to think, right?
Well, it's kind of like well, I'll ask small businesses like, why did you put a 401k in? Well, my employees wanted it.
Right.
Okay. Are you matching anything? No. All right. Are you putting anything in? No. Profit share? No. Then my employees wanted a 401k. Okay. So what's the end game on that for you?
And then, I've had lots of experience where then the employer, they have to comply with federal law, the qualified plans,
right,
is what 401k is. And the loan provisions, and then the HR person in the company then becomes like a banker.
Oh, they're spending more time administering the thing than I mean, just even getting a bond sometimes is a pain in the rear because we had one like recently this week where someone calls us up for an ERISA bond because it has to be bonded, right? And
we hadn't even gotten into the requirements.
So I mean, it's just crazy because you're looking at it and the person setting it up is supposed to establish it with a separate identification number called a trust identification number, and they didn't even have one yet. And I'm like, oh, okay.
People are setting them up without it, but it's required.
It's required.
Yeah, what could go wrong?
So that's another disadvantage.
So that would really be administration.
It's administration.
Okay.
Yes. So admin can be, it's more administrative heavy on the side of a 401k than it is on a cash balance plan.
But they're still
there.
The 401k is a defined contribution, the cash balance, defined benefit, but they're regulated heavily and they have lots of requirements.
They do.
They do.
That is a disadvantage. And if you ever look at the summary plan document can be 30 to 90 pages.
What?
So
sounds like a prospectus.
If you are really having trouble sleeping at night, I would recommend picking up a summary benefit description and just start reading it. I guarantee you'll be asleep by midnight.
Yeah, and then too. I mean, going back to the 401k, and I don't mean to jump around too much, but then who's liable for the custodian requirements on the 401k?
Yeah. See.
Okay.
It's all.
So there's disadvantages.
How you set it up is really key.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you set it up correctly. It's kind of like if you're doing estate planning and you're going to set up an irrevocable trust, you better know what you're doing because undoing an irrevocable trust is have fun with that, right? Yeah. And it's you can make amendments to plans.
Sure.
But I'm just going to tell you when you make amendments, it costs money to file those amendments.
The dollar sign for the non-viewing listener. It costs money. I'm shocked. That's only a small administrative cost.
Yeah.
One example. Okay. But so there is administration required.
There's administration required. So let's go to a third disadvantage is just so we know. So again, we talked a little bit about you better have a good exit strategy. We talked about the administrative details. Let's talk about the what if you have to go backwards because your company.
Because you can't fund the required contribution in a given year?
Yes.
Oh, okay. There's laden with requirements. Okay. So you don't have the capital. Small business doesn't have the capital to fund the plan in a given year. So I'm shocked that could even happen.
So it happens.
Sure, it does. Life happens. Yeah,
life happens. I mean, I remember back in 2009, 10, and 11. There was a lot of small companies couldn't fund the plans because the Great Recession took a tank, right? So. Can you imagine? Just imagine this: that your cash balance plan was in the market, and you lost whatever amount, and now you have to come up with that additional
contribution to try above the plan contribution to
balance it out,
that you're not behind.
Right. And there's another thing is otherwise the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation says you're out of compliance.
We're not guaranteeing.
We're not guaranteeing it, or we're going to jack your premium so high you can't afford it.
Okay, but if they say I'm not going to guarantee it, I bet you they don't refund the premiums paid.
They do not.
Of course.
No.
I'm shocked again.
Yeah.
This is a shocking episode.
So you just you have to know going in. So you have to have to know how to do this, or the person you're dealing with should know how to do it.
Exactly.
Because you have some options. There are options. The government understands life happens. Believe it or not, they do understand it.
I don't believe you. I'm kidding. Yeah.
But
they do make provisions.
They make provisions.
Look, at the end of the day, they want those contributions in there. They want that plan alive because that is a cash cow for them.
It totally is.
So yeah.
Why do you think they're saying, hey, the 10-year rule and Secure 1.0, which after you pass away, your qualified money has to be used by your heirs in 10 years.
And so what he's talking about is exactly that. So they limit, like if I die and I leave a qualified account to my heirs, it has to, other than a spouse generally, okay, that account must be liquidated within the following 10 years, actually 11. It's got to be done. The first distribution has to be done before 12/31 of the next year. All right, so it could, but it's 10 years in liquidation.
Yeah, 10 years.
It might be 1 year before I actually have to, start liquidating. But prior to that, is where people were talking about, the multi-generational IRAs.
Stretch IRAs and stuff, yeah.
Where previous to that, this 10-year rule, a beneficiary could inherit the account and then take distributions over their life expectancy, which has its own RMD table, required minimum distribution table.
Yeah, you can use the 72T rules and.
Well, that's already been there. Hadn't been changed, but the 10-year rule.
10-year rule limits all that.
Yeah, it limits the life expectancy of the beneficiary, the distribution. Okay.
So you just have to know, going back to the cash balance plan, if the business can't fund it, what are you going to do?
All right, I'm going to work harder.
Yeah. Right. So, I was having this conversation with my wife. I was like, it's interesting because there were times when we would hear our parents tell stories where they needed money. They could go out and work that day and get paid that day.
Yeah.
Those days don't exist. So
people just don't work. I'm kidding. Come on.
So, it's all good. So where this is going is, okay, so you have to make sure that, okay, if the government, if you start it and then 2 years later you liquidate the plan, they're going to go, did you just do this to get the tax break? And you could end up having to pay all that tax break back.
What? No penalties, though, huh?
Yeah, well, there's some. I didn't get to that part yet. So you just have to know that. Okay, there is an option to freeze the plan.
Right.
Which we did freeze some plans back in the day. So we had to, because there's no way they could come up with
business cycle.
Yeah. The next and we turned them back on again, and you freeze the plan. But
so you put them on hold. The filings go on hold. No, because you go back to the administration.
You still have to pay the admin fees.
Okay, yeah, you got to pay the admin. How many filings throughout the year does even the average cash balance plan require?
So you really have one, frozen plan. You have the 5,500 that has to be filed every year, which you're paying for. But you also have to, because you're filing that, you still have to collect the data.
Sure.
That they're asking you to collect.
Yeah.
So
because we have to be in compliance.
We have to be in compliance. So there's data collection there. Yeah. And if the person you're working with is good, knowledgeable, then they can really help you eliminate the administrative cost on your end to collect that data.
So if a plan's not frozen, how many filings are required throughout the year?
So, you're going to have, depending on how you have structured your deposits.
Okay.
So, 401ks, they've gone into forcing people to put money in.
You have to opt out now.
Yeah.
But
but we're saying in this one, you could actually fund the side fund in a lump sum the day before you file taxes.
Right.
Which that's a dangerous process because unless you're setting the money aside, which how many people do that?
Okay, so that we have the 5,500 that has to be filed every year, even if it's frozen.
Yeah, and then you have plan amendments that have to be done because the government does change things.
No way.
from time to time.
Employees change too. Employees come and go.
Correct.
Their salaries change.
And you have to file that.
All of those.
That's an annual. That's part of the annual valuation that you do.
Valuation.
Okay. So and then
that's going to determine any adjustments in the contribution.
Correct. And then you also have terminations that you have to make sure that you don't want. And then comes in the vesting. Mm-hmm. So if they're partially vested, then you have to have the third party administrator calculate what goes out. And they have to send them a letter to say, hey, your money's in here. Yeah. You can take in reality, you really want them to take their money and roll it out.
Of course.
If you leave it in there, you're now subjecting yourself to additional pension benefit guarantee corporation premiums.
Right.
Because they're leaving it in there.
Right. So, and my point here is, there's more than just somebody needs to admin. There's time, money, and you really should have, to do it, you would have to work with a competent, educated professional that knows what they're doing and is not practicing on you, because there are a lot of requirements.
Right. So going back to the first thing, the discovery in 2004, if you have someone that's just a cash balance person, they're going to do everything they can to keep you where you're at when tough times come. Yeah. If you're talking to someone who's acting like, hey, I'm just going to act in the best interest of my client, then it's a different story, because then they're going to be acting in. I understand when my clients come to me and go, Pete, this is a rough time. Yeah. 2009, 11, rough times for a lot of business, a lot of small businesses. So we
have more ahead of us.
Yeah. So there's always going to be cycles where things are great and things are not. Things are great and things are not.
Right, so what are the other disadvantages? When you can't fund, you can freeze it. Then there's only one filing required.
Right. So, and you have to understand the fact that when you freeze the plan, it just sits. And it's not doing. Right. It's not doing anything. So
when you unfreeze it, do you have to do any catch up?
Yeah, there's some things you have to do to get it back going again.
And then what are some other disadvantages?
So, and we talked. To me, the biggest disadvantage. Okay, so the biggest disadvantage to me in all this is those three that I just mentioned. But number one is the strategic. If you don't have a strategic exit plan on the way out, you can be in, because you can dump a ton of money in. But if you dump a ton of money in, it's going to come out at some point, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to have to be strategic in the way you pay.
I get that. And I would think to add personally, the disadvantages, like you are going to pay taxes in an unknown bracket, period. So would you rather pay taxes in a known bracket or an unknown bracket? It's a legitimate question, right? Sure. And so would you rather pay taxes on the seed, it's a contribution, if I'm putting, whatever, 100,000 in or 10, it doesn't matter what the number, I'm putting 10,000 in and I'm expecting some kind of a growth formula. Do I want to pay taxes on the 10 grand or do I want to pay taxes on the 30 grand when it comes out? Yeah. Seed or harvest concept. And then the business owner, it's in a trust. So they have no access to that capital. None. Zero. So I'm going to separate myself from that capital. Yes, I love the employees. I want to provide them a benefit. So that exists. Okay. So I would just say that those are
some of the things that are advantages are also the two-edged sword of the disadvantage comes back into play, because you say, I'm separate. While the trust can be a great thing because it's blocking off any lawsuits or anything that and protecting the money on the one side for the sure, and even the owner, it's separating the money. Over here,
protects them, because then they're not liable. They are liable, but it's in trust.
It's in trust. Yeah. But the other side of that is you now flip. The flip side of that is, okay, now I don't have access to that capital when it's in there.
So, just comprehensive. There's pros and cons to everything that is done in life. Okay. So, any other disadvantages?
I think we kind of hit most of the advantages and the disadvantages in there. We can get in the weeds and go into small stuff, but that's I want to keep it up.
General. So, the importance so far is working with somebody who's qualified, and then understanding, the pros and the cons, right? And but then you mentioned several times the strategic exit strategy, which you got to have an exit strategy in everything you do. Your real estate investing, you're going
your
to
business,
work, whatever. Yeah, you
succession
buy a home,
plan,
blah, blah, blah. Your life, your whole estate. Okay. So what do you want to talk about on the...
So obviously, if we're throwing everything into the market, for example, because you can put cash balance,
Sure,
everything in there. So if you put it in there, it's going to be treated just like your 401k qualified money. So strategically speaking, we're back into that second bucket. And
well, you got to earn a high interest rate just to overcome the future taxation and inflation between now and then, right? Isn't that what we're all?
That's exactly it. So when you turn that bucket on, you're going to be paying taxes on every dime that comes out of there. And now you're back to, okay, remember the client I told you that retirement's right here,
sure.
And we're trying to figure out all their money's in this bucket, and how are we going to get it out without paying an enormous amount of taxes? We got to leak it out.
So what, you want to share your solution?
So
with them, or
right. So I mean, obviously there's if they don't need all that money right now, we leak out some of it in a known tax bracket that we're at now.
So tax bracket harvesting,
bracket, and then we roll it to another bucket. So
but it's already taxed.
It's already taxed coming out. So which bucket do you want to roll it to?
So then you want to try to shield that net withdrawal from even more taxation.
Right. So you don't want to go back to bucket one. You want to go to bucket
whatever. Yeah.
That third bucket, right, is where you want to go. Well, you may have some challenges with Roth on that for starters, right? Depending on what you make.
If I'm in retirement,
you don't have Roth. So where do you go with that?
Yeah.
So I'm going to point my finger back to you and say, James, where should we go with that?
Yeah. Well, it depends on the situation.
Right.
It could be gifting, it could be,
right. It's going to be dependent upon.
But if you're talking about life insurance at that age, and then the question becomes insurability, not whether life insurance is good or not. Every situation is different. But the point is that the money still comes out, it's taxed. So the net of that is strategy, right? Part of an exit strategy. Tax bracket harvesting. So, I'm going to take just enough out to not kick me into the next tax bracket or avoid being in the highest tax bracket.
So we're doing mitigation.
Yeah. That's right.
That's what we're doing. So the other part is if on the front end you structured this and said, hey, I'm going to have some life insurance in this.
Yeah.
So
if you brought life insurance in as part of the cash balance plan, which is limited on how much life insurance you can put in there, but it's in there.
Right.
Okay.
It's in there. So with life insurance, depending on what you use, this is where I would always use whole life because it gives you the greatest flexibility.
Well, you can't.
It's 50%.
It requires guarantees.
Right.
The cash balance plan requires guarantees. So that in itself limits.
Correct.
Okay.
So, under federal rules, if you're term life insurance or universal, you only get 25% can go into that of what the total contribution is.
Right. So if I have $100,000 a year contribution, I can only have $25,000 allocated to life insurance.
If it's term or universal.
Right.
If it's whole life, I can go up to 50%. Right. Correct. I can go up to 50. Now, what does that do for us? So along the way, the government...
I wonder why that is.
Yeah, because the guarantee that's in there.
Okay.
I'm just going to answer your question for you. Because the guarantee that's in there. So with that guarantee in there, of course, the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation, they love that.
Right. They got to have the guarantee. Yeah, exactly.
They like the guarantee.
Right. You got to pay premium, and it's like, we don't want to pay a benefit. So, we'll shift the risk to, that other third party. Life insurance company.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they like that for starters. The other thing that goes into that is there's this wonderful little thing called PS58 costs, which people go, what the heck
that's
is
just the required pricing of life insurance.
Right. It's the economic benefit. They use those PS58 costs to calculate the economic benefit inside a qualified plan. So if you buy any business life insurance you buy, if it has economic benefit to it, it has to be taxed to the employee, that economic benefit.
Okay. Yeah.
So the PS58 costs are what they use to calculate the economic benefit, which is what you're taxed on.
Okay.
So if you take the plan, the life insurance, and you convert it to, here's option one, you convert it to cash value, and then you take it out. at the end of the rainbow.
What do you mean you convert it to
Well,
cash
you're not
value?
converting. You're going to cash it out.
You
cashed out the
exit
plan.
it from the plan.
You exit it from the plan.
Right. You can,
and that cash value that was in the plan that you're taking out is now taxed, just like turning the faucet on in bucket 2. There is a way.
So what and this is the only, to me, in my, well, and I don't want to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, when it comes to, because I've done cash balance plans in the past, I will not do them again. I would refer them out if the client, business owner just absolutely believes that they have to have one and it makes sense for them. I mean, I'll bring in the expert and God bless them. If you have a cash balance plan, this is me and my personal beliefs. If you have a cash balance plan, you do need an exit strategy, no question, to mitigate. I mean, but you're very limited. So I'm not saying, hey, you should go buy a cash balance plan, because I fall heavily on the disadvantage side, right? Because comparatively, everything that we do is compared to something else. What could be done, instead of a cash balance plan? So, and I'm not saying it fits everyone.
No, it doesn't.
The comparative or the alternative, which is just outright owning life insurance, properly structured, and becoming your own banker, having access to the capital, paying premium with after-tax dollars. I have asset protection in most states. It's all limited. Or you check with your own attorneys in your own state what the limitation is on asset protection when it comes to life insurance. And then I have access to that capital, over from now on. And then in quote unquote retirement, then I can take passive income and I can access that money tax-free, and I can take, if I wish, income tax-free. That's my preference, right? But if you have a cash balance plan,
right,
there's no question you have to work with somebody who's educated and thoroughly knowledgeable on a broad spectrum, okay? And then the exit strategy is absolutely critical, because you have put yourself in a position where you're forfeiting control. Yes, there's a benefit to the employee, but you're already trying to highly weight the benefit to you, and then you're at the whim, really, of the IRS and the Internal Revenue Code. Okay, so I'm just saying,
the incidence of ownership is key, right?
Yeah.
So the trust. That with that trust identification number, they own your life insurance.
What?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So
you got the economic benefit of the life insurance, which is calculated from the PS58 cost. That economic benefit is the taxable, is what it's taxed on.
Right.
So if you exit correctly and you say, I'm going to take that life insurance and continue it on outside the plan, I'm going to the trust transfers ownership to me at retirement.
Yeah.
I have to pay the taxes on that economic benefit.
Yeah.
It's already predetermined by the IRS.
Right.
It's a lower tax bracket than most that you would probably be in.
Another mitigating
thing.
Potentially mitigating.
So if that's the case, we take it out, we become the owners of it,
right,
and we turn it into
Whatever. Passive income,
whatever.
Estate planning, legacy planning with the death benefit.
You got the death benefit. Yes. So you have a distinct exit strategy with that in place on it.
Everybody does. I mean, the people that operate in the cash balance world know this.
No, they know it. Yes.
This is not groundbreaking news. No. The listener may not have heard much about cash balance plans.
So again, it's all about the mitigation of how much taxes are you going to pay. If it's kind of like some people may have heard of Joe Robbie. Joe Robbie was the guy who owned the Miami Dolphins, and he had Joe Robbie Stadium. When he died, he had no estate plan in place, and his kids paid
thousands of others.
Yeah, like $46 million. They had to sell the Dolphins to pay the deal. It's a sad day.
Listen, farmers, that's nothing new to farmers. They've done that for generations.
So the reality is again, whether it's cash balance plan or your own estate or whatever it is, you need to have an exit strategy other than, because everybody does this for accumulation.
And tax deduction.
So they're thinking right here and not here.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with any of that.
So for in reality is, like I said, does it fit everybody? Oh no, it does not.
Well, I think, and I've had conversations years ago with companies that that are very unique, talented, experienced, and high level success and knowledge on cash balance plans. Okay. And I know, and I'm not a CPA, I'm not giving tax advice, legal advice, or any investment, any advice. Because I believe if you have a cash balance plan, you might ought to consider, if you're going to get this honking tax break, right, that tax break that you would have paid, right, having not done the cash balance, that may be applied to privately owned life insurance, right? So I would think, and I'm sure I'm not the only guy in the world that's thought of this. I wasn't original, but I don't know the others. I don't know anyone else who has come up with it. But if you had a life insurance policy outside of the plan that you're building, you're funding with, paying the premiums with after-tax dollars, you go forward into the future and you have this cash balance plan with life insurance in it, you can buy that policy out of the plan. Now, in my experience, about 50% of the CPAs and the cash balance administrator or the plan administrators are like, yeah, you can do that. Others will say, no, you can't do that. But if you can, then it would make sense to me that you borrow against the life insurance policy that's outside of the plan to purchase the life insurance policy that's inside of the plan. So the same money, and there's a value to the life insurance in the plan, right? And so it's a dollar for dollar swap. All right, so now you have two life insurance policies outside of the plan. One, you got the tax deduction and jump through all their hoops to create. All right, the other you funded with
your own dollars.
But now you have an outstanding loan. And I'm just spitballing here with my friend and sharing their experiences. And it's like now the money, because the money is going to come out of the plan, period. Right. And it is going to be taxed, period. Correct. So that could repay a loan to a life insurance policy that was used to purchase the plan that was inside the plan.
Well, yeah.
All right. And then you have two phenomenal, in my opinion, contracts that you own privately that have.
Correct.
Anyway, so have you ever done that? Have you ever heard of that?
So heard of that. And
where'd you hear about it? Because
it was one of those things where we're sitting around like this, and we were talking, and
somebody else is
spitballing as well.
Well, I presented this to these, administrators of the cash balance plan that I mentioned earlier, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, James, that's the greatest idea ever. Can you put all that plan together and present it to everyone?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can do that, but that's just one unfinished project that." Time to get to. He walked in my office yesterday and he's like, "My gosh, you should clean this up."
No, I was like, "Could you spread out any more?" That's what I really said, because he had his files. He goes, "This is today's stack, and it's not even down to the bottom yet." And it was like,
so I'm just saying, I'm working, I'm busy, and that's a valid,
No, it's a very valid, and I have not heard of anyone who've executed on that, but I think it should be.
Yeah, if you have a cash balance plan, in my opinion, you should maybe consider the exit strategy.
Strategy on that, and you should consider that.
Now every financial guru in the world that listens to this podcast is going to go create this.
Probably. Yeah, I mean, it's a brilliant idea. I don't know of anybody in my circles that actually have executed it. Again, it's the talk thing. Hey,
great presentation,
spitballing. But what you and I both know, it's when the rubber meets the road is when you actually put it in effect. And
it's all conversation until somebody pays a premium.
Right.
Or makes a contribution or actually signs. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And you'll have accountants and different advisors, attorneys will say, "Oh, you don't need to do that. You don't need to put life insurance in a plan. You don't need to do." And I mean, you'll have all the naysayers. It'll be on both sides.
Yeah,
they'll be on both sides. The biggest thing is understand what your situation is, and hopefully you have someone who's good enough to try to help you walk through that to give you what you need.
Right. And what benefits you.
What it benefits you.
What are you trying to do? Right.
Yeah, because everybody's situation is different.
Sure. And the future is unknown.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have to have the conversations there. So, it's not for everybody. And anybody comes in and says, "Well, we need to put a cash balance plan in, James." Yeah. I'd be like, Why? I mean, why? What's the end game?
Pretty good question. It's like, you should do this. Why? Right. I mean, so, going back and that didn't really mean, we didn't sit down with an agenda. I mean, we sat down with, the benefits guy. This is the stuff that he does. And so we knew we were going to talk about it, but I didn't know that we're necessarily going to go that deep into that. But there are other benefits out there that employers can engage in to benefit themselves and their employees. And they're every one of them have requirements, right? I do the executive bonus and there's requirements to that. You mentioned the 162 yesterday where, an employer can buy life insurance on the employee. It's theirs, but then there's a contractual agreement between
the golden handcuffs.
Yeah. So they can't really use it, and there's some taxation there. I mean, so all of them have, different requirements. It's like the other, the key man has its requirements and its limitations. The executive bonus, the double executive bonus, the what's the other one? The deferred comp.
Deferred comp.
It's like, remember when Walmart bought life insurance on all their employees and didn't tell them? And so now, if you do a non-qualified deferred comp with life insurance, you have to do the informed consent.
Informed consent now, yeah.
Yeah. And then you have to file with the IRS every year, because the IRS wants to know where your money is. They already know where most of it is.
I can't imagine that. That's shocking to me.
Right. Well, look, I've always said, because it's true, if the government can print as much money as they want, can they do that?
Well, obviously, we've already seen them.
They do that, right? Okay. So if that's true, and it is, if they can print as much money as they want, why do they need to confiscate my private property through taxation?
Yeah.
Oh, it's control.
Yeah,
Hello?
exactly.
Okay. I digress a little.
It's quite all right. But there's all different subjects of different things. And the things are that there's things you can do that legally discriminate against other employees. This was just one aspect.
Yeah, we're not covering all the plans. No, we were just kind of
this is one that actually had a really good exit strategy, but you have to start
really
with,
good.
You
have to pay less taxes, but I don't know what they are.
Yeah,
right.
The exit strategy becomes like you just said, but you have to have the foresight to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do with this, and it's not something you back into and go, oh, let me just do that now.
So I would encourage the listener, the viewer, to discover the idea of the infinite banking concept, the idea of becoming your own banker, the idea that you can control the banking function at the you and me level throughout your life. And of course, the earlier you do anything good, the better off you are. But that does not mean that you can't catch up. Like, the cash balance plan, these, whatever, the law firms, the medical firms, and, high income, executives and business owners, trying to catch up because they were financing their business for the previous 20, 25 years, and now they're in a position that they're behind the 8 ball and they got to get caught up. Maybe you can learn how to finance these things, your business, 25 years or 20 years prior. So you're not in the same position of having to catch up, is all I'm saying.
Right.
And then if that's true, if we just go, I didn't meet Nelson until I was, I think 41 years of age, okay? And he was 72, let me just say as a side note, and the man was working harder than most 40-year-olds at the time, so I want to be just like him. Okay, I understand that we all want to discover that once we are exposed to this idea of the infinite banking concept, now, I don't know, I'm trying to squeeze this in, we're at an hour and a half almost, but I think it's important. If I learn, as soon as I learn, if I vet the idea, all right, do my proper research, which is not on TikTok, social media, YouTube. There's the book, Becoming Your Own Banker, Nelson's first book, his second book, Building Your Warehouse of Wealth, a third book that it's almost required reading, in my opinion, is How Privatized Banking Really Works with Dr. Robert Murphy and Carlos Lara. And then there's some other material that you can use to educate yourself. 6.5 hour DVD, available digitally now. It's not downloadable, but you can have digital access to watch a 6.5 hour presentation by R. Nelson Nash himself. With those reading materials and that 6.5 hour series, you're going to have a pretty good foundation of understanding whether you want to pursue the idea of becoming your own banker or not. And I'm saying the earlier we learn this and the sooner we practice this, throughout the business, right, we might be in a better position as compared to being behind the 8 ball, facing quote unquote retirement, right? So there could be there's always alternatives, right? So to wrap that up, it's like if I learned about a cash balance plan, I may not even have the ability early in my career as a business owner, but I would probably have a better ability to start becoming my own banker, right? And then if you're already in a qualified plan or cash balance plan, no question you need to work with a competent, educated, the proper professional. Okay, no question about that. And there are exit strategies that should be considered in everything, especially these qualified plans, especially these, the cash balance plan and these other things that we've kind of talked about. And I'm just throwing out that if you're already in a cash balance plan, you might yourself discover this idea of becoming your own banker, working with somebody that's knowledgeable, and that could be potentially part of a beautiful exit strategy. I mean, that's the best exit strategy from a cash balance plan that I'm aware of, right? Even though I have not done that, right? I have, like I said, shared the idea, and demonstrated some of the illustrations. It was just a project that I didn't want to continue or involve myself in with the time that was required to do that. It would be required. You
stay, and this is where it goes: is you stick with what you're good at and what you're trained at and your knowledge base, and you serve those people very well. On the flip side, I've been in that realm for a long time. Right. So and just turning it back on the other side of the coin, I spend a lot of time there. And so,
no question. So I mean, we're friends. We've gone back a few years. He does cash balance plans at a very high level. Okay, and so I mean, you're not here just because you. No, you and I are friends, and I'm learning from James because we talked. Again, what he just shared with you, that's even a better exit strategy. That's the best. That is the best. Yeah. So to add that to the mix is super huge, super huge. But again, it for each person, it's going to be a different situation and what they want to do with it. But just to have that quiver that says, okay, what's best for the client? What's best for the client? I'm like, I want to avoid Uncle Sam. Going back to the, I think I left out when I'm going on and on about myself that I'm a contrarian and I'm also an anarcho-capitalist. No government would be preferable, but until we get there, the least amount of government is the solutions. Yeah. Okay. So did our founding fathers say that? Oh my gosh. Something about at best. I mean, as great as the country is, the greatest country that has ever existed, in my opinion. But man, it's flawed. I'm just saying that I love America. I despise Washington, D.C., the politicians, both sides, all of them, So, look, we might have to edit that out, I'm a positive guy. My heart is full of love, okay? All right, but we're kind of wrapping up. Is there anything that you want to share that we left out that, last minute thoughts? No, I think we, we could go on for forever on all the different tangents and get into the weeds, et cetera. I think we covered this pretty well. And I'm hoping it was educational for starters because there's not a lot of explanation, even when I sit down with people on cash balance plans. You got to take them from ground zero to 1,000 miles an hour. Yeah. And it's people always go, oh, well, that should be a simple sale. And I'm like,
No, people need to understand what they're getting into. Yeah. Just like we went through the advantages and disadvantages of you, we take clients through that as well, so that they know and they understand, because they're going to ask that question. Well, what happens if I have a bad year in business?
Yeah.
What do I do? Is there a way to change that?
Yeah.
And so, I think it was I hope it was educational. I hope people got a lot out of it.
Yeah. Well, I had fun.
Yeah, we had a good time. We had a good time talking. But
all right, well, listen, thanks for listening. And like I said, I had fun. See you next time.
Thanks, James.
All right.
Thank you for joining us on the Banking with Life podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and click on that little notification bell. Otherwise, join us on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher for weekly content.